how Leicester has changed, and how the people of Leicester have changed, and what was Leicester like all those many years ago, be it in the schools or shopping, jobs, holidays, how people used to live in the 60s and 70s and 80s. Obviously, I'm too young to remember all of those times, but I've got some really distinguished guests with me this morning. So can I introduce both of my guests? First of all, Balu Patel, who used to live in the Highfields area in the 1960s. Welcome to the show, Balu. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And also Harun Sheikh, who's also a local resident of the Highfields area back in the 70s and 80s. He's a bit younger than me, I think.
Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, and you didn't mention who you actually were. You said, I'm presenting your show. Who are you?
My name is Zuffar Haq, sorry. My name is Zuffar Haq. I'm presenting the show. I don't claim to be the youngest out of the three, but I'm not far off, I don't think. But first of all, can I just say Ramzan Mubarak to everybody. If it's day one or day two of your Ramzan, it's certainly day one for me. And this morning I was getting ready, and I nearly ended up eating some peanuts, but I just remembered just in time that I was fasting. Harun, it's day two for you. How's it going?
Alhamdulillah. Day two, I must say, is much better than day one. Yesterday I just had a banging headache all day.
All day.
Yeah, it's caffeine withdrawal. That's what it is.
And cigarettes or not?
No. Just caffeine.
Just caffeine withdrawals. I suppose that's exactly. First few days you feel it a little bit, and after that you get into the rhythm. I certainly remember doing the real tough ones back in June and July time, and you just think, wow, these are tough. But actually, what we've got now is 7:45 opening. It's not too bad, is it?
It's not bad at all. Alhamdulillah, it's not bad at all. Yeah, so yesterday was good, apart from, like I said, the headache. Today I've woken up with a very clear head, ready for the show.
Very ready for the show. Yeah. Excellent, great. I also wanted to sort of mention the fact that, my father, my mother, and lots of other mums and dads, and lots of other, part of the community from all people from all different backgrounds, the generations of our mothers and fathers, and the sacrifices they made to make this city the great city it really is. Because when they came, nothing was available. It was totally different world they were living in. And we really do have it easy. And, we've got to pay respect and really pray for our loved ones who have passed away, because they really made this a great place to live for us. Really have made a difference. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, okay, I admit I'm the oldest one in the room.
You don't look it, Balu. You don't look it.
So let's get that out of the way. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Zuffar. I mean, I was brought up in Highfields in Donington Street. Prior to that, lived on Melbourne Road, and I still remember in the old days it was coal sheds. That's how difficult it was, and outside toilets. And our parents worked hard through the years.
Balu, you old, man.
Yeah.
You can remember that, you are old.
So, yeah, you're absolutely right, Zuffar. Through the years, they worked really hard, and then also gelled together as a community as well.
Yeah, I mean, the gelling together of a community. Nobody looked at what religion anybody was. Nobody looked at anything at the background. They were all immigrants, and that's what they kept to. And I certainly remember my father talking to lots of different people from different communities and helping them and getting involved in them. And I bump into some of those people on the streets, and they say, "Oh, we still remember your father. He helped us do this or helped us do that." That was the nature of those people across the board. They were all so generous with their love and their care, and even their money. They would not not be scared to spend money on other people they didn't even know. And Harun, I think you've got a great example as well. I remember you mentioning me some time ago.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It was about 30 years after the event that I was actually in a business meeting with someone, and an old gentleman, and he sort of had the surname, and he pulled it all the way back to where we were living, and says, I remember your father from 30 years ago, and my uncle in London said, when you get to Coventry, make sure you jump on this bus and get to this address and give them a hug. And he was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. And the hospitality was second to none. And we need to always remember our parents and the people who set Leicester up in the way it is a great city.
And I think, Zuffar, one of the things really early on in Leicester excuse me, was when we arrived from India and Pakistan, we came to a community of Polish people and Irish people and Italian people. And when I went to junior school, because moms and dads were having to work, so I was always brought up by an Italian family. You know, after school, my sister was brought up by an Irish family. You know, and it's strange, but you talk about community feeling. I think that's something we have lost. I think we have lost that, because in those days you could open up your front door. Well, you didn't even lock your front door in those days. You know.
Yeah. Sorry, Harun, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I have very similar sort of recollections from where we were growing up in Highfields. I would say at the time we were on the corner of Bakewell Street. We had the mosque on one side, our house on the other side, and in between, I would say we were probably less than 50% Muslim.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And then sort of over time, all the old people disappeared and they were replaced with Muslim families. But up to then, yeah, like you said, there was a lot of going in and out of people's houses.
And also around Glossop Street, before, again, I'm going to be dated here, before St. Peter's was built and all of that, there was a strong community from the West Indies. And again, you know, we all kind of just mixed in and worked together. It was a great feeling.
The problems were actually all the same for all communities, wasn't it, really? And they all stuck
You
together.
had something in common.
Yeah.
What I remember was when I used to talk to my dad, he worked in a foundry. And I think that was the common thing, that everybody was working class.
Yeah.
You know, in Highfield. So everybody had that kind of recognition. Nobody was from a privileged background, whatever. And I think that's what united people.
Commonality, definitely.
Commonality. I'm going to go back a little bit. Right. So, Harun, where were you born and how did you end up in Leicester?
Right. So my father's elder brother first came here in 1962. My father arrived in 66 or 67. I was born in 73 in Leicester, Leicester General.
At Leicester General. And where were you living at the time?
We were always in Highfields.
Always in Highfields. Around that same area.
Around that same area. But so I was born in Ward 31. Many years later, obviously, I met my wife.
Yeah.
She just so happened to have been born in that same ward as well.
Well.
And both my kids were born at Leicester General as well.
Okay.
We're proper Leicester
General family, yeah.
Yeah.
So, Balu, and you, where did you...
Well, I'm almost born and bred Leicester. My parents originally came in the mid-50s, and I was born in Bolton General Hospital. Apparently, and I've never been able to research it, but apparently I was the first Asian boy to be born in Bolton General Hospital.
Well, claim to fame.
I've always intended to go back and do a bit of archive research, a bit of claim to fame when I was born. But we moved here in 1960 and lived on Melbourne Road, where Upland School is now. So there used to be large terrace property, similar to what's on the opposite side.
There are large villas, aren't they?
Yeah. So we were there. And then we moved to Donington Street.
Yeah. So my background is my father came to Leicester in 1938. So he was one of the early settlers to Leicester. And I was born in the 60s on Buxton Street. So number 33 Buxton Street is where I was born. The house has since been knocked down and replaced, by the way.
They got a few of the new ones.
Yeah, they got a few of the new ones, and it was those few new ones.
Yeah.
So that was the place I was born.
But that is amazing, Zaf. 1938.
Yeah.
Yes, 38.
That is amazing.
Yeah. So our sort of family history goes back a long, long way. In fact, he was on the 1939 census, living around the New Walk, and he's actually on the census as Abdul Haq, living an address there.
And how did he sort of say how many people?
There was a half a dozen people from the ethnic community who were there, all friends sticking together, living in this one house, and they were basically door-to-door sellers. They used to sell socks, handkerchiefs, and everything else. And in that era, there was no shops everywhere, so they used to go to the villages and the outskirts, the further areas, walking and with a suitcase, and just go and sell different products to different people.
So did they know any other households like that, or were they the only guys in?
I think they were the only families there.
Wow.
Yeah, they were the only families there. There was about from what I want to know, there was only about 5 or 6 people in Leicester at that time.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
So that's where it really all started. So when you were growing up, which schools did you guys go to? So
primary was Charnwood.
I started off at Spark and Hoe Nursery, then Medway, and then, of course, the greatest school in town was Moat Boys on Melbourne
Boys,
Road.
yes, which is now converted to a health centre.
It is.
Yes.
It is.
Did you go Moat as well, though?
No, I went to Charltonwood, and then we moved to Clarendon Park area. So I went to Avenue Junior School and Lancaster Boys.
Right.
So
Oh,
slightly
Lancaster
different.
Boys.
Yeah, Lancaster Boys. Yeah. So slightly different routes, but certainly interesting years for growing up in Leicester in the 70s. Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, how did you find school? Was it difficult and tough? You know, for you guys, I mean, it certainly was for me in Lancaster Boys. I can tell you.
Yeah, see, I went to Lancaster Boys as well.
Yeah.
And I found it...
A little bit later than me, I would have thought. Yeah,
a bit later.
Yeah.
But I found that transition much harder than the schools back in Highfields.
Yeah.
They were fine. But even afterwards, even at Lancaster Boys, you know, to be quite honest, I love my school life. It was brilliant.
Right. Moat Boys was absolutely fantastic because we're all local.
Yeah.
So you played together, you went to school together. You know, it was just great fun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was.
commonality again.
Yeah.
Commonality again.
Yeah.
I mean, I found it difficult because there wasn't many people from Asian background at that school at that time.
Sure.
You lost the
I didn't-
commonality.
Yeah. So I struggled in it, and it was not easy because racism was there. Racism was in across the country at that time, and nobody thought about anybody swearing at you, saying different words to you. It was part of the course.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, again, because Moat Boys was really mixed because we had like the West Indian community there, but also obviously the people from the English community, the Irish community, and the Polish community. So the school was it represented what you saw outside, your front door. So that's why I thought it was really fun.
For us, the highlight of growing up would be going to the Abbey Park fair show.
Oh, the bank holiday one.
The bank holiday one,
Oh,
yeah.
yes.
So we would have to wait until after 3 o'clock because that's when the cheaper tickets were available, and then we used to have to queue up there and then go in for after 3 o'clock. But by then, most of the places were actually packing up.
Yeah.
But that was the sort of highlight of our sort of calendar year that we would be able to sort of try and do that, and we'd walk all the way there because you
We
just
all
couldn't
did.
afford.
But did you aim for the fair though? Because that was the highlight, wasn't it?
Yeah, the fair, going to see the fair. Yeah.
Because usually you didn't get the fair coming around like it does now. In those days, you had to go to the Abbey Park, and that's where the fair was.
Yeah, that was the only fair in
That
town.
was the only fair you
Yeah.
get to go on.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant.
Yeah, and so just going back to shops, can you remember which is the sort of time when you realise, wow, this is the shop that's open in Leicester. Wow, this is something different. First time in your lives.
Well, I suppose this is where I get dated, but those of you that know Charnwood Street, where Vulcan Road is and all of that, in the old days, Charnwood Street actually had a lot of independent shops. And that was really exciting because those were like hardware stores, everything else that you wanted. That was like your shopping centre. You didn't have to really go into town. You just went down Charnwood Street, and that's where it was.
So is it where those little industrial units are opposite the school?
Yeah,
right now? Is that what you're talking about?
So if you kind of go towards those industrial units and then head towards St Saviour's Road, because that's all brand new in a sense. That's now counts.
Yeah.
Well, you have to imagine the old days with those terrace properties, and then along the main part of Charnwood Street were all the shops.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was really exciting.
Yeah, it was just before my time because obviously I was at Charnwood, but I don't remember.
No, remember that. For me, I certainly remember living on Buxton Street. I certainly remember the first Asian sweet shop opening, that Punima Mount Bassa.
Oh yes.
Yeah, and I can remember it being a furniture shop, and then it converted to that. And I was just thinking, wow, we can buy samosas now. It was just amazing. It was something like, out of this world. And you just think, wow, and now you don't think about it because you can go to Asda and buy samosas. But actually at that time, there was just nowhere available.
And there was another house on Matlock Street that I seem to remember. And they used to do jellibes and things like that.
Yeah, somebody was selling from home, we heard, yes.
Yeah.
Matlock Street,
on Matlock Street as well.
Yeah.
Some Asian guy with a good side business in those days, which is great.
Yeah.
It's entrepreneurial.
Entrepreneur, yeah.
That's what got us through, mate.
And actually, that's an interesting point that we sort of say that. But actually, Leicester has changed because immigration has driven growth. And if you imagine Leicester in the 1960s was the workshop of the world, clothing workshop of the world, is one of the second most richest cities in Europe at that time. And then all the clothing businesses were on decline, all the other industries were on decline. But the Asian communities came in, and particularly from 1972 with the Ugandan Asians, it transformed Leicester into still to a very dynamic, thriving place again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think in the 1990s, I think that really became evident, because that's when in the 1990s we had like Cora's, the large the factories that were really closing. And what happened was that the independent small businesses, they kept the city afloat because they were going out to places like Germany and doing business directly. So you could imagine, like, the guys from Cora were trying to do business, but because they had so many people that they had to report to, that they couldn't actually compete on prices.
Yeah.
Because by the time the decision was made, it was too late. Whereas the Asian guys, or the bosses, were going out. If they were saying, look, we have to reduce by X amount, they made the decision, they came back, did the close, and that's what kept us going.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, if you're small, you're nimble, and if you're nimble, you can pivot.
Yeah.
And if you can pivot, then you'll catch the business.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as the acceleration in Asian entrepreneurship is concerned, the influx from Africa really made a big impact. Obviously, they've done it before.
Yeah.
My parents and their sort of peer group came from rural areas in India, really without the entrepreneurial flair. Whereas the guys that came from Africa, they'd done it for generation and potentially the generation before that as well.
Yeah.
They knew how to do it. They turned up here, maybe without a penny, but they knew how to turn the wheel and make it work. And they did. And a fantastic job they've done.
And I think also where we've had an impact, we may not, again, this is going historically, you guys will probably remember this, but the corner shops, they used to be closed on Sundays and maybe closed on a Tuesday lunchtime or something weird, and definitely closed by 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Slowly, when the Asians took over, they were open 7 days a week until 8 o'clock. And that, again, brought about a different dynamics in terms of, how we shopped. And
I mean, ultimately, I think Asda copied the Asian businessman.
Yeah, absolutely.
It wasn't the other way around.
Maybe they should have copyrighted it at the time. You should have copyrighted it. Yeah, made a mistake somewhere down the
But
line.
it was really noticeable. In those days, definitely no shops were open on a Sunday.
Yeah, that's right.
And closed half a day, usually on a Thursday. Even the large stores in town, like Lewis's and the other stores.
I remember the Sunday closing. I don't remember the half day. Was that before my time, was it?
Half day.
Thursday, Lewis's departmental store would be closed.
Really?
Yeah.
So if you go back to the factories, I mean, I made a list here, and remind me, and if anybody's got any other names that they want to throw out, is please, send us a message on our WhatsApp message. Our WhatsApp number is 07748 855 055, or you can give us a call in on the studio, 0116 248 2206. I'm going to throw some names of the factories that were around at the time: Cora, Stibble, British Shoe Corporation, British Shoe Machinery, Pex, Pick, Richard Roberts, Cannon and Stokes, Imperial Typewriter, Walker's Crisps, Liberty, E.W. Bryan, Gent.
Nabisco.
Oh, yes, of course, Nabisco. Wow.
We all had the broken biscuits.
We all had the broken biscuits. You're right. Yeah. Across the city, there were broken biscuits bought by the Asian communities.
Where was that? Where was Nabisco?
It was in Wixton, I think.
It was one in Wixton, and the other one was on Frog Island.
So the Wixton one is still a biscuit factory?
Yeah, still a biscuit factory, yeah. If you go to Wixton, you could smell the smell of biscuits across the air. Yeah. It's not quite the same now. And the same goes for the West End. Around Frog Island, around sort of Gruby Road in that direction.
Wow.
Yeah. And Walkers, of course. All family members, Friday evening, I remember boxes of crisps you'd turn up.
But those businesses, all of these businesses relied on lots of Asian labour. And let's face it, loyalty was there, and actually the ethics of working hard were there.
Yeah.
Definitely. Again, and I think it was shift work that came in and things like that. And I think like I said, the work ethic amongst the Asian community was really strong, and they felt they wanted to work hard, did overtime, whereas I think maybe the English community felt they wanted a bit more leisure, and therefore, that's what they were interested in.
Yeah, I think the difference is when you can't afford leisure, you got no choice but to have a work ethic.
But I think also, again, our families were working hard, particularly our parents, to give us the opportunity to break away from what they were having to deal with.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
they worked all hours. I mean, I don't remember my dad. You know, Saturdays and whenever he'd do overtime. You know,
They were keen to do that, weren't they?
Yeah.
They
Make
really
sure.
made that hard work. Do you think we could do it in our group, or our children could do it? Really?
Wow.
I think it's the environment, isn't it? And if you were put into that environment, would you be able to do it? Well, you'll never know unless you are put in that environment. And that is the difference.
That's
now.
the difference.
Yeah.
And holidays, you know, I mean, we know they all work. Holidays, yeah. Holidays, yeah. We know all the, you know, I certainly, you know, my parents and everybody's parents worked incredibly hard in those days. And, you know, I could still remember if somebody was going to India or Pakistan or wherever they were going back home, there'd be a big sort of issue. You know, it'd be news. It'd be like, oh, we must go and see him. He's going to India. Yeah. It was like people wouldn't go every year. They'd be going every 5 or 10 years if they were lucky. And the cost of, you know, travelling back to India or Pakistan was about £500-600, which in those days was a couple of months' salary.
Do you remember people used to write letters?
Yes.
And there were the blue letters
yes.
with the blue and thing all the way around the end. By email.
By email. Yeah.
But you know what was the most frightening? When you got a telegram.
Yeah.
When
That
you
means
got
something bad has happened.
Everybody panicked when you got a telegram because you knew that was not going to be good news.
Yeah. I you know, and it wasn't really until the 80s when the telephones started picking up and other things, means of communication became reasonably affordable. So holidays, where did you go? Was it Dubai, Marrakesh? Where were you going in those days?
Yeah, we were regularly going to Dubai.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
I think Dubai was even just a hut then in those days.
Yeah, no, I mean, you were lucky if you got a day out to Blackpool to see the lights, a day out to Skegness, you know, something like that. And maybe a couple of nights or a few nights away at your uncle's house in London or somewhere. You know?
That was your highlight, wasn't it? That, you know, it was the same in our families. You know, a highlight was going to a relative's house. You could stay there 2 or 3 nights and come back, and that was about the only holidays we got.
But do you remember in Leicester, the July fortnight, everything shut down?
Yeah.
And then if you went to St Margaret's bus station, there were queues and queues of buses. Then that's how you did your holiday. And then if you wanted like a day away, Skegness or something, then you had to go to Humberston Gate.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's where the excursions were.
Yeah.
You know, and those that were going overseas in the package thing with Cosmos, I think it was.
Yeah.
Those kind of, they were all lined up. But Leicester was really unusual for 2 weeks. Starting at July, it just was a different place. It all closed down.
So it would have been the right time for Balu, wasn't it? 18 to 30s sort of.
But the reality, I mean, people just didn't go on holiday, did they? Really?
No, we did. Skegness was probably there.
It was the highlight.
It was the highlight, and you know, it's changed now. I think it's probably changed in the last 20 years, from about 2000 onwards, really. That, you know, they have all the holiday destinations, and people all go abroad now.
But again, Zuffar, that was interesting because, like we said, we would go with the English company, so we'd go down to Humberston Gate. Then over a period of time, and I think when you said like people from Uganda came over, there was bigger community. Then we started doing our own trips. Bognor Regis, Scarborough, you know. Then we got more adventurous, and we'd all get together as a community, and then we'd all go out, you know, to these different locations. So it did change even then.
And the change was, you know, really made a difference to lots and lots of people, really. It did, because, I mean, I remember myself, I don't think I saw the seaside until I was about 17, because none of our school trips went there. We couldn't, as a family, really afford to go there, and we didn't have a car in those days. Very few people had a car, and the only person that I remember, my father used to go and pick people up from the airport, and there was a taxi driver called Mr. King, lived at the bottom of Buxton Street, and he had King's taxis, and he was the only person. I can still remember his hat, one of those Russian type hats he used to wear, going down to London, and you know, but people used to spend money on other people in the sense of trying to support their communities. That was really part of their ethos.
Yeah, helping people establish, set up. I mean, it didn't just happen it wasn't just a miraculous occurrence. You know, people came and they were assisted, and there was a sort of a network of people that are helping other people, and that's how it all sort of kicked off, you know?
Well, again, going back to the early days, you just couldn't walk into a bank and get a mortgage.
Yeah.
You know, in those days, as
Yeah.
a community, we all had to support together. I know when my parents bought their first home, they were supported by the local people, and then when they had an opportunity to help other people, that's what they did. They
So it was a community bank almost, yeah.
was,
Yeah. We're going to ask the question, but we might get somebody to answer it. Your father bought a house in
1960,
whereabouts?
Donington Street.
How much do you think, I'm asking the listeners now, how much do you think that house was purchased on Melbourne Road in 1960s?
Donington Street.
Donington Street.
Yeah, and if you get the answer exactly right,
Right.
Zuffar will give you the equivalent.
Yeah. That's fine. That's fine. That does tell you it wasn't a lot of money. Yes. So if you are listening and you think you can have a guess at how much the house was on Donington Street in 1960, please give us a call. Our telephone number is 0116 248 2206. Or you can send us a WhatsApp message on 077 48 855 055. You're listening to 87.7 FM, Radio Ramadan, and Memory Lane. I'm your host, Zuffar Haq, and our guests are Harun Sheikh and Balu Patel. Joking aside, it makes it seem unreal when you think about it. I know my father purchased the house where we were living on in Buxton Street for about £400 or £500 in that time, and basically nobody had a mortgage. They all borrowed money from each other, and collected together and bought the house, and then they would pay them back over a number of years. Wasn't that a great
and again,
feeling
that's
to be
why
able
our
to...
families had to work really hard, Zuffar, as well, because when we said earlier on about doing overtime, they recognised that they had to pay other people back and things like that. So there was a real focus, I think, in the community in those days to say, right, we need to stand on our own 2 feet. So yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I agree with you. And that was one of the primary reasons why you had so many wage packets coming into one house. Just to pay off those debts and pay off the house and do all of that sort of
And
stuff.
I don't know if you remember the first Indian restaurant, but it was a real treat if you ever went there. Do you remember it?
What's the first one?
What was the first one?
I think it was the Kainor on. It was a Kainora, I think it was. Now I'm not sure if it was on Highfield Street.
Highfield Street, yeah, I've heard that. Yes,
That's
yeah.
the one.
I heard it's either was it the Kohinoor or was it the Taj Mahal or something?
Something like that, but it was on
Highfield Street.
And I remember it was an absolute treat to go there.
But Balu, didn't we have that food at home most of the time?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It was a very, very special occasion that you actually went to an Indian restaurant.
I mean, if you just think about that, though, just imagine how well Indian dishes are liked across the world, let alone in the UK.
Yeah.
I mean, at one stage, chicken jalfrezi was the number one dish in the UK. Tandoori chicken, it was the number one dish in the UK. It's transformed the country, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Again, it goes back to that work ethic that we said, because restaurants always stayed open beyond the pubs. And that's where they worked out. If they wanted a drink, they had to go for a curry.
Yeah.
But then they really fell in love with it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I mean, now you can go on the train, you can go on different places, and you'll say, "Oh, we've got samosas. Do you want one?" So it's changed. The world has changed, and it's
normalized now.
It's normalized.
Yeah.
It's normalized, and it's almost you can go anywhere in the UK and you'll see all sorts of Asian touches to lots of different dishes, lots of different sort of businesses as well. Chaiwala and lots of other sort of popular brands now in the UK are coming up because they want that, and others are copying, aren't they? Really?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we've definitely weaved into the fabric of society here now. It's been like I said, main influx was 72.
Yeah, 72 onwards. I think that was the turning.
You're looking at 50 years now.
Yeah.
What sort of impact have we had in 50 years? We've had a big impact, I think.
Yeah. And actually, I think to a degree it's made it easier for people to live in these kind of countries as well, because it's become more cosmopolitan, more international, more everything else. Yeah, more anything else. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think in terms of Leicester, it is definitely really cosmopolitan. I mean, I get to travel around, as I'm sure you guys do, but somehow when you come back to Leicester, you always feel like you're coming home.
Yeah.
You know, it's got a different feel to it. And again, I think because different communities have blended together over a period of time as well, as opposed to in other cities, there's a bit more segregation that goes on.
Yeah.
Whereas I think in Leicester, you know, our neighbours, you step out and you're stepping into the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And obviously, both of you guys work with the local NHS trust quite a lot. How has that changed over the last 50 years in terms of the number of Asian people working, using the services, etc., etc.?
I can remember actually going back in the 60s, my father telling me that Dr. Said, who was a GP in the city,
He's my GP.
yeah, so he couldn't get enough patients to register, so they were going around knocking on doors with the community. Can you register with Dr. Said? Can you register? So he could get his own surgery set up. So it wasn't until the 60s that GPs started coming in. And when they started coming in, all of a sudden you saw a domino effect when people from the hospitals started taking Asian doctors. And now, I mean, the NHS is run, I don't know, it must be 30 to 40%.
Consultants, I think, very much. Not so much the managerial side, I have to say. And that is really disappointing. And we're addressing that. But in terms of the medical side, definitely, we've got really good specialists.
And it's changed. It's changed dramatically.
And we're talking about internationally recognised specialists in Leicester. So,
well, you see it every time I go to any surgery or hospital or anywhere else. There's a very good likelihood you're going to be seen by an Asian doctor.
Yeah. And actually, it's the NHS has actually also embraced the Asian community itself, hasn't it? Really, bringing them in and saying, "Look, come on, do these jobs. We can do these. We can do that." And it's evolving even more. There regrettably is an issue about management, isn't there? Really?
Yeah, and we know, because obviously I'm involved in it, and we're very clear about this. And you'll hear the chair and the chief executive be absolutely clear about it. At the senior level, those numbers have got to change, or should I say, be more reflective of our own community.
Yeah, and if you look at it, the jobs have changed for Asian people as well. Before, there'd be bus drivers or they'd be in the factories and everything else. That job is no longer there for them. And they're now the doctors, the dentists, the opticians and everybody else. So, you know, lots of those businesses are thriving and lots of those areas of expertise, professionals are thriving as well, aren't they?
Well, accountancy and solicitors, there's a whole, industry now of younger people that have gone into those professions.
And it's great to see so many role models for the next generation to sort of aspire to, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we've got some great guys doing some great stuff in Leicester and, in the country. But along the same lines, well, on the opposite end of the spectrum, we've got some really dark sides to the community as well, and not so good stuff. But as far as the good stuff is concerned, I think people have made so many inroads into every single profession. I don't think there's a profession left that we've not really sort of dominated. Really.
Football.
Football,
yes.
Football, absolutely, football.
Well, we've got all the international players coming in to dominate that for us, but generally there is certainly an issue. And it's not just football, I think it's just sport generally.
Yeah.
Isn't it really? But that could be something that will change in our generation. Because if I look back at sort of my father's generation, most of those people were saying education. And if you sort of said, I want to do sport, or I want to do this, or I want to do that, they didn't really understand it, and they didn't really push you in that direction. No. And I think nowadays that's changed, because most people, I know of people who are involved in golf, cricket, football now, their parents are now supporting them all the way to try and achieve something in that.
But we're talking about memory, but again, we've just that whole incident with Yorkshire Cricket Club. Yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate, but it had to be highlighted by somebody that was a player, and eventually, he got the recognition to say that racism still exists, and hopefully, as a consequence of him being brave enough to stand up,
we're going to see change across the country. Yeah,
that we will see. But that's, I suppose, one legacy that hasn't really changed with the times.
Yeah, I mean, everything else seems to have changed. Engineering, I know lots of female engineers, lots of people going in different sort of fields, it does seem a little bit odd that we just haven't broken through in sports necessarily as much as we should do in relation to the population that's in the UK. Really,
I think maybe the next generation. Of course,
Yeah.
if you wanna focus on a sport, it costs
a lot of money.
yeah, exactly. And
lot of
unless
money.
you've got sort of parental support, or unless you've got support from, I don't know, whatever funding bodies are around, etc., it's very, very difficult to make it a full-time sort of profession.
Yeah.
And if you go back to the 70s and 80s, well, like we've just discussed, you were just paying the mortgage off, paying people off. It wouldn't be like, it'd be like, Zuff, you want to be a footballer, mate?
Yeah.
Go and do one.
Yeah. That's the reality is, the priority was a house to live in, food on the table, and making ends meet. And realistically, if you think about even the travel issue, the 500, 600 pounds it would cost them, they would be saving money just to go back to see their mums and dad, my parents.
And also supporting family back home as well.
Yeah, that was a big thing.
Because I remember my dad, and I'm sure it was everybody around the table, we was also helping our families back home as well.
Yeah. And then at the same time, there would always be some relative coming from there, and then we would be
every weekend.
Somebody would be then supporting. I know my father would have somebody coming in. They've just come in from Pakistan or wherever, and we would be supporting them for a few weeks and until they got on their feet, and that was part of the routine in life in those days.
But also, I think again, I don't know how it was with you guys, but in the early days, we let out a lot of the rooms.
Yes,
lodges. Just again, one, it brought in money to help the loan, but also there were lots of young people coming over, and you helped them. There's numerous people that I remember that we just helped get off get them into the community, and then they've progressed with their own families later on.
I mean, if you think about it, the way that air travel has changed, because air travel is just as cheap as what it is. It's so cheap in comparison to your earnings now.
I'm smiling because my dad came in on a boat.
Yeah. So did mine. But
back in those days,
on a steamer. Steamer
was a luxury.
Steamer into Liverpool. Yeah. So it was a steamer into Liverpool. So, but the reality is now people go to India, Pakistan, go anywhere in the world
without thinking about it.
And in comparison to, in relation to your salary, back in the 60s and 70s, it would be probably a couple of months' salary. Now it's a week's wages to go to India or Pakistan. Yeah, literally. And it
just generally. I mean, you can fly into Europe and other places cheaper. It costs less than it does to get on a peak time train to London.
Yeah. It's £32 to Milan and back.
Exactly.
And it's more expensive to go to London on the train.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Can't figure that one out.
It's very odd.
It's odd, but just imagine had it been that cheap in our parents' era, it would have been so much better, wouldn't it?
Listen, again, I don't know, guys, but like you, we didn't have a car, Zuffar, and so when we went to Birmingham, we went on the train.
Yeah.
And I think it was just at the time when diesels were beginning to come in. It's always a blend between steam trains. But I remember the hot chestnuts at the railway station. I don't know if you guys ever travel, and you used to get hot potatoes and things like that. So
at Leicester Station.
Yeah. That was one of the pleasures of travelling by train. That in the winter particularly, there'd be vendors outside that had jacket potatoes or hot chestnuts and things like that as well. Things like that have disappeared.
It's
gone.
Maybe somebody listening of the Asian community will put that back in. Great idea to do.
You know what? I think it's a winner.
Yeah. It's a winner.
In this cold weather. Hot chestnuts, definitely a winner.
I mean, that was the other thing as well. You used to heat your house by coal. I remember the coal era just about, and then gas fires, and it's only really in the last 30 odd years that central heating has come in. Really,
but heated your water in those days again. You didn't really have gas cookers until maybe late 60s onwards. So people were using, the coal fires and things like that to heat up water as well.
Yeah, just imagine doing that. Lighting a fire to keep your room warm.
By the time I sort of have my earliest recollections, we were onto paraffin by then. We had
the paraffin
ugly
heaters.
blue paraffin heaters.
And the smell.
Oh, I'm sure it did lasting damage, that paraffin stuff. Yeah, can't have been good for us.
It could have been good for us.
Could have
No,
been good for us.
I mean, you'd go into a room and you could smell the fumes,
Oh
couldn't
yeah,
you?
yeah, big time.
What about the electric cuts and this miners' strike? Do you
Yeah,
guys remember
yeah.
that?
yeah. I
You used
remember
to have to look in the newspaper to find out which area was going to have
Yeah.
a blackout. You know, I mean, it was exciting times when you were a kid.
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And what about TVs? When did you, I mean, we
Black
used to
and
rent a TV from GK Cowlings, I remember.
Divisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and then when they used to go wrong, which they did used to go wrong because the valve used to go or something used to happen, they used to come around and repair it, but you'd be ever waiting for them to come and repair it because, cinemas was a luxury. You wouldn't be able to afford to go to a cinema really.
How many channels did you have?
Three.
That was it, wasn't it?
Three, yeah.
Black and white and 3.
Yeah.
One,
Now look
two,
what we've
three.
got.
Oh.
3,000?
And still nothing to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, still nothing to watch. Yeah, exactly. Still, you go back to the default position of those first 3. Yeah, One, BBC One, BBC Two, and ITV.
Spoiled for choice.
Yeah.
Spoiled for choice now, really. It's unbelievable when you think about it. But, I can still remember when video recorders came in, people used to hire video recorders because that was the only time you could watch an Asian movie
Yeah, and wedding videos.
and wedding videos.
Oh my God, yeah.
So, yeah, we should actually look up some wedding videos of the 70s and see what they're like.
Have you got yours, Zaf?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't. No, I don't.
Oh, you need to get it.
I got married in Pakistan, so I didn't really have a video
have
there.
one, oh.
No, so, but I can imagine what they were like. Can you imagine?
And the video shops as well that then sprung up.
Oh yeah, every corner. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the weddings didn't take place in the luxury that we have now. Everybody used to get together, used to help out cooking the food,
Yeah.
and it was either Wesley Hall or some of those halls, and the wedding was done.
Yeah. Just over and done with rather quickly.
Well, it was a big thing because you need a big operation, a big team of people shopping, cooking, doing this, doing that.
And again,
serving.
everybody chipped in.
Everyone chipped in.
Because I remember, like my dad, he used to specialize in something, and bags of sugars would arrive, and
Yeah.
and then somebody else would be doing something else.
Yeah.
And then you just got together, and the wedding took place.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a real kinship between each other, wasn't it? Really, in the 60s and 70s, and actually, I miss that bit because we just have not been able to create that again. Really, and there's just so much sort of more self-centered.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think, and the other, again, I don't know how things have changed, but nowadays I think we're all guilty. If we're going to go somewhere, we usually ring somebody up and saying, well, we're coming over, we arrange it. In those days, you just got to knock on the door.
You just
Yeah.
turned
And
up.
people
yeah.
walked in, and then your mum would probably run into the kitchen and rustle something up.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's how it
exactly.
used to be.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
People didn't let you know in advance they were coming. They just and you didn't know whether they were staying for half an hour or 3 days.
Well, the thing is, how could they let you know? There were
No.
no phone. No
No
mobile.
telephones.
Yeah,
No
exactly.
But the society's changed in that sense, hasn't it? Really?
Yeah.
I think they're more accepting. They just said that's the way it is, and you used to put up with it.
Yeah.
Nowadays, if people turn out without ringing, it almost feels like an inconvenience,
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
it?
yeah, exactly,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah, because they're intruding on your time.
Yeah, exactly.
And whereas I think in that generation, people were thinking, well, our time is for everybody else as
Yeah.
well,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which is really a great sort of scenario. And I think that's how they created the great city that we were living in now.
Yeah.
It was good fun. Like I said, plenty good memories. So.
Yeah,
And we haven't
it
even
was great.
touched on Spinney Hill Park yet.
the cradle of all civilization in Leicester.
A lot of
Spinney Hill
stuff
Park.
went on in Spinney Hill Park.
Oh,
The
yeah.
bandstand.
Oh, yeah,
Do you remember the cafe at the top as well?
Yeah, I remember it very vaguely because by the time I sort of. I remember it. I do remember it,
Used
but I
to
don't remember going there that much because I think by then it had gone.
Yeah.
I just remember the Adventure Playground opening in the 70s, and I thought,
Yeah.
wow, this is great, fantastic. But, never got to enjoy it because we moved by then. So lots of things changed in Spinney Hill Parks over the years.
Definitely. But I'm sure we've all got memories around Spinney Hill
Yeah.
Park.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 100%.
We're running out of time now, so really thank you, Harun Sheikh, for coming on. Really appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
And Balu as well. Thank you very much for coming on. Really great to listen back to see what Leicester was like. And now you just look on these main roads, Evington Road, you just think, wow, this never looked like this ever in our lives. But it's a change for the good, and let's just hope that we can keep some kind of kindred spirit going across the city. I know both of you will always try and do that and try and aspire to that. Let's hope the next generation does look at everybody and think, look, we're all here together. We're all part of humanity. We need to work together and live together, and let's make it the best possible life that we can have for everybody.
Well said,
so,
Jeff. Well said.
you're listening to Radio Ramadan. I'm